Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Kausha, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled A-N-D, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. This is show number 8 today, our 8th show. You might want to have a pencil and paper handy. I'll be mentioning some things you're going to probably want to jot down. The first miracle story I'd like to talk to you about has to do, we'll call it the hospital elevator story. I went to visit somebody in the hospital recently. Actually, over a 2-day period, I went 2 days in a row, and this story covers that span of time. I went to this hospital, and this particular hospital is a bit of a maze. There's like 4 buildings to this hospital, a large hospital, and in order to get from one building to the other, you need to take an elevator up 2 floors, walk across, take another elevator up or down. So it's a constant maze of taking elevators and going up and down floors to take the right elevator to get to the right building. So it can get confusing, obviously. And many people running around lost, and I was one of those people. But I was let to go. I went to visit the person I went to see, and then after I was finished with the visit, I was led to leave. And as I was going out, I was inspired by God to stop and have a sandwich in the cafeteria. I hadn't planned to do that. It was an impromptu suggestion, an inspiration, and this is how coincidence miracles begin, as we keep saying. Or, God inspires us to do things. If we follow his inspirations, it turns into a miracle. So I went to the cafeteria as inspired. I had a pretty nice, relaxed time there. I was talking to God while I was eating. It was not the busiest time of the day, so there was a lot of space. I got a great table by a window. I really enjoyed the time. When I finished eating, I got up to leave, and as I was walking out, I was inspired by God again. I saw a man in a corner all by himself, and I was inspired to walk over and offer him a card. Again, I pass out these cards that tell all about my books and all about my lectures. It's a small business card, so everything is compact and pretty effective to hand to people. So I stopped and I said, "Excuse me, but I've written 2 books about miracle stories. I'd like to just give you a card." And he looked up stunned. He was amazed looking at me, and he said, "Tony, I know you. I've heard some of your lectures." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you." And then we talked a little bit, and he reminded me where we had met in the past. And he said, "I've been having a problem. I read your books. I read both the books, and I have tried to apply the things, and I'm having a problem because I don't get the experiences that you do." And so I got inspired to sit down inspired to sit down and talk to this person because they were having difficulty interpreting or applying what was in my books. And I, have certainly been inspired over the years that what's in the books was inspired by God, and most people get it. So we talked. It turned out he had not read a couple of the chapters, and that was the basic problem. So if you read my books and you don't read one chapter at a time in order, you miss the sequence. It's like my books are like a recipe, and if you read them in order, everything is perfectly clear. So we talked, and I filled in the gaps and explained to him. And he's very grateful because he said to me, I'm having some crises right now in my life. I've got two particular problems. I've been trying to solve them and ask God what to do, but I wasn't getting any answers. And so I'm really grateful, I bumped into you. And I felt self-actualized, God had prompted me on this particular day to stop in the caf for a sandwich. And if I didn't follow that message, this man, by the way, came in after I had arrived, so the timing was set up, obviously. So that's a coincidence miracle, right? I mean, I arrive, I see the person came in later, they just got their lunch while I was leaving. And that's all a clue that God is in charge, that he's running things, because you can see how the person arrives just at the time you did, and you weren't planning to come to the cafeteria. It just turns out that a coincidence happened again. Many coincidences usually indicate that God has, designed what we should be doing at what time of the day. So we finished talking, and he asked a lot of questions, good questions, but again, just because he didn't read it in order, and he agreed, and he said he was going to go back home and read it again and go chapter by chapter. So that's one coincidence miracle, maybe really three coincidences, that I was there on the same day as him, etc., etc. And we were at the off-peak time for lunch, which is another coincidence. He also was off-peak, not at the right time for lunch either. So we said goodbye and transferred phone numbers, etc., so we could talk in the future. And I went toward the elevator. And as I said earlier, this hospital complex, you have to take several elevators to get where you're going. So I had to take one elevator up to another floor. I had to walk across a connector to get to the other building, and then take an elevator down, trying to get to the garage. And I'm telling you all that because of what happened next. So all these coincidences, perfect timing so far. What happened next was, when I get to the garage floor and the elevator opens, I walk out and I turn right, and I heard somebody call my name. As I walked, perfect timing, I turned around, and it was a woman. She said, "Tony, we met yesterday, and we talked, and you gave me your card, and I was so excited about it after we talked about, how we can talk to God, etc., and I was going to get your book, and I had lost your card, misplaced it." And I said, now what am I going to do? I don't know, I couldn't remember your email address, etc., etc. And so I was frustrated, she said, and here you are. And she said, "I just went up and down 2 elevators to get here at this time, so I guess we're having one of those coincidence miracles you talk about." And I said, "Absolutely. If you know what I did to get here at this moment, you would agree this was a coincidence miracle." And so another example for everyone that God works these amazing things. She's looking for me. She needs to get another card. I come out of the elevator at the exact time only because I had talked to this other man and I had gone to the cafeteria, and only because the elevators, I had to take 2 elevators to get here, and so did she. Perfect timing. Okay, the next miracle I'd like to talk to you about is called meeting your identical twin at the park. It's another amazing coincidence miracle, and I like to elaborate what coincidence miracles are again for those who might be new to these programs. Coincidences are things that happen that seem to match. Somebody is controlling the fact that the coincidence happens, and it's a way for us to notice God. And often, matter of fact, in my life, every time I see coincidences, I analyze what happened, and I guess almost every time I analyze what happened in a coincidence, I see that it was a miracle. And the tinier the coincidence, by the way, a lot of people say to me, "Well, that's so small and so minuscule, Tony, and so minor. I can't believe God would get involved with that." And I've been watching this for 50 years, so I tell them, because of what I've learned, the tinier the coincidence, the more minuscule and tiny that it is, only convinces us of how God is so intricate and perfect and so amazing. God actually gets involved in the tiniest of details. And if you watch it and notice these tiny details, it becomes like a symphony. You know, a symphony is put together by a lot of tiny notes, and it becomes a beautiful thing if every note is in position. So I encourage you to notice the tiny coincidences, and you'll be more impressed than you can imagine. All right, so this example, I was led to go for a walk in a park. As most of you know, I walk in a park and I talk to God as I'm walking and thinking. It's very helpful for me to do it that way. But I went at a very unusual time in my day. I normally go in the morning. This was late afternoon, but anyway, I was led to go. I wanted to walk and talk with God, so I went to this park in the afternoon, and while I was walking around, I came around a corner. I was on a long path, and I happened to look up. I typically look at the sky and the trees, etc., when I'm walking, or look down. In this particular moment, I was led to look up, and I looked up, and I looked way down the end of this long path I was walking down, and I saw a man get out of his car. And when he got out of his car, he made the sign of the cross, blessing him. It's a thing that Christians do when they're praying or when they're getting some miracles, actually. And I saw him make the sign of the cross, and he started walking toward me. And I was amazed with that. So I was thinking about, why did I notice this, and how come this coincidence happened? I see a man, and the coincidence that I noticed in making the cross was a very quick thing that he did, and I just happened to notice it. So I was getting inspired by God, to ask him, and I was inspired that you won't be sorry if you do. Ask him why he did that. And so as we got closer, actually it was very cordial. He said to me, "Hello, how are you? It's a nice day." And I said, "Yes." I said, "Can I ask you a couple of questions?" I told him I wrote 2 books about coincidence miracles, and I'd be delighted to ask him something that might be helpful to me. And I said, "I was just inspired to ask you. I saw you get out of your car and you made the sign of the cross. And can you tell me, why do you do that? Or what are you up to? Because I come here to pray, and I was so impressed that maybe you're praying too." And he said, "Oh, yes." He said, "I do that all the time." He says, "I come here quite often, practically every day. And in my life, I always make the sign of the cross." He said, "I'm a Christian to my beginning and my ending of my prayers." And I said, "Well, that's great. I'm glad I asked you." And so we talked some more about what he does, and I talked. We introduced ourselves to each other, and then it turns out that his name happened to be Tony as well as mine. Can you imagine? We both have the same name. We both come to this park and we walk and talk to God, and we both have conversations with God. It turns out he's very accustomed to doing it as well. So his name is Tony, and lo and behold, in our discussion, it turns out we are exactly the same age, give or take 30 days. We are the same age. So let me just summarize a little bit, okay? Both of us walking in the same place, same time. We both just arrived, and I normally don't go there at this time. We're both praying. We both have the same name, Tony. We both have the same age. We both, for the last 40 years, have been talking to God like this. And we have similarity we notice coincidence miracles. Let's see. We both notice in our life that we've had coincidence miracles many, many times. Okay, I would remind you that if you want to listen to past shows or current upcoming shows, please Google the following simple address. It's wcatradio.com/miracles/ wcatradio.com/miracles/, okay? And if you want to email me, my email is tonyand777 @AOL.com. All right. Well, God bless you all. Talk to you again next week.